In truth, I couldn't wait to be free of the crowded rectory, if only just for a few minutes. I gave the sisters a polite bow of my head and followed the superior out of the room. The rain had ceased, just as our meal had concluded. We walked briskly along the path between the rectory and the chapel. The evening air was cool and pleasant after the rain, although dark clouds were still threatening above us. The superior seemed oddly tense as we approached the large doors. Somehow I knew nobody would volunteer to help me in the chapel, but it made for a good show, don't you think? Nobody will suspect a thing. My apologies, Superior, but I have no idea what you mean. She did not reply. The Superior held open the heavy chapel door for me and ushered me inside. I obliged and then let out an embarrassing yelp as I saw two people waiting for me inside. One was large and stately. I did not recognize him. The other... It is about time. My apologies, Sister Angela. Angela had been sitting in a pew near the altar, but she had risen to meet us as soon as the door had opened. There was no mistaking her lanky form, even in the dim evening light. The person sitting next to her, however. Sister Hedwig, you have met this man before, although you may not recognize him.
I wish I could be meeting under more pleasant circumstances, my child, but it is nonetheless a pleasure to see you in the flesh once more.
It is an honor to meet you. Again? Mr... This is His Excellency Richard Bell, the Bishop of Carlisle.
You can grab the Bishop of Carlisle, I'm sorry.
My goodness, Oh, my apologies, Your Grace. The portly man gently waved away my apology.
Worry not. I've met no one else in a situation quite as unique as yours. I realize this must all be very strange to you.
He knows? Yes. I briefed both him and Angela on the extent of our investigation this afternoon. I could not believe it. I gawped at Angela, who made a point of looking straight past me.
My travels brought me here a little earlier than expected. Such a tragic situation. I felt I should be more present than my usual monthly visit for the sacrament allows. I'll be here for just over a week to offer counsel for the grieving.
And our investigation shall continue apace. The man sighed heavily.
I appreciate your diligence, but it sounds to me as if you're staring the answer in the face and refusing to believe it.
I do not think it's that simple. I believe, as does Hedwig after our own extensive research, that James Foreman is innocent.
Which would mean that one of your charges is a murderer. And how could you even entertain such a ghastly idea?
Call it one of my hunches. Have I been wrong before?
Mabel, come now.
Have I? Mabel? It suits her. It suits her. What have your other hunches been? I told you I had a bad feeling about building a clock tower onto the side of the chapel. It was a foolish idea. And lo and behold, it fell down not a month into construction.
A lucky guess.
I have storied career of lucky guesses then, Your Excellency. Before I was appointed abbess, this place was on death's doorstep. I've cultivated and pruned it into a garden. A simple one, perhaps, but a garden nonetheless.
I do not mean to insult you, Mabel. In fact, it is my respect for your work that gives me such pause. How could I believe that one of the sisters you preside over, many of whom came into the church under your selection, would be capable of such a thing?
The Superior did not have an answer for this. I recall that I could hear her teeth grinding in the ensuing silence.
I do applaud your ingenuity in recognizing that Hedwig here would be an impartial observer, but it seems to me this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Please forgive this hypothetical, dear sister, but why is Angela part of this trusted circle now?
I would like to note that I too believe James Foreman is guilty.
I'm just entertaining your superior's logic for a moment, if you'll allow me.
Of course.
Well, Mabel, Hedwig, I understand, but what places Angela above suspicion?
Sister Angela is my prior. It would be impossible, as well as unethical, for me to continue to keep the investigation from her. She found James and accused him to begin with. I should like to put her belief through its paces.
She is to be your successor.
Indeed. And while I disagree with her position on Mr. Foreman's alleged crime, I love and respect her. I would like this to be a learning experience for her.
My dearest Mabel, I know you love and respect all of your Duns. Why then must you believe that one of them is a killer? And why couldn't it be Angela?
The Superior and Angela looked at each other. Angela grimaced. Well, grimaced more prominently than usual. I can account for all of my movements the night Catherine was murdered.
I'm sure everyone here can.
And they can be vouched for.
Oh?
Angela was in my office at the likeliest time of Catherine's slaying.
In your office?
Complaining. I was vigorously arguing against the misapplication of yet more of the Abbey's funds, and requesting action be taken against some of our sisters' poor behavior. There might have been more items on my list. It is my responsibility as prior to check the Superior when I sense things are wrong. Nobody could possibly overlook your diligence.
You mean to tell me that her alibi is that she was arguing with you for long enough to be sure that she wasn't involved? Forgive me, but sounds rather unbelievable.
The Superior and I exchanged a glance. Angela looked away and exhaled sharply. It's true. All eyes turned to me. As ludicrous as this story sounded, I thought back to my conversations with the Superior in her office. Those walls and that door were thick. As angry as it made me to imagine Catherine's death being overlooked by the Abbey's authority simply because they were bickering, it was all too plausible. That is believable, actually.
My goodness. Well, I'll do my best to stay on your good side then, Sister Angela.
I will keep that in mind, Your Excellency. Why didn't you tell me this before? Either of you. I had hoped to inform you last night, as it happens. I thought back to the events of the previous evening. Angela had indeed said something to me before leaving the Misericorde, or rather, before she was practically chased out by Catherine. See, I think Catherine, who are the people in Lynbarrow Abbey who would ban somebody in their chat that was annoying them? Catherine with a K, Margaret. Flora would not. Flora would complain a lot, but not do it. Moira would never, too kind. Eustace would stop streaming before she banned anybody. Eustace they'd be gone. They'd be out. Darcy doesn't read chat. No, I don't think Flora is actually confident enough. I think that Flora likes to complain. Eustace would prank someone until they left. Yeah, I guess I read Eustace as I don't know, not as just like, I guess she is more confrontational than I'm giving her credit for. Eustace would make burner accounts. Darcy doesn't read chat. Darcy is not looking at chat at all. Darcy's doing 8 to 12 hour Stardew Valley streams and never looking at chat. Adela would ban? Adela would. Adela would in a way that would make it like... I think Adela would be the best streamer of the group. I think that she's got a good attitude for it. I think that she's headstrong, but also like jovial. Mabel? Axel, you guys on a first name basis now? That's soup to you, buddy. You're no Bishop. Bishop Firewood. Angela wouldn't ever go on Twitch. Angela has a subscription to what's that YouTube alternative that's for video essays? Like the subscription only one? Nebula. Yeah, she wouldn't stoop low enough to go on Twitch. No, I think Catherine. One of the Pope candidates is a cardinal named Pizzaballa. That's awesome. I do have a Bible in arm's reach. Hell yeah. Heck yeah. My understanding of these events suddenly felt a little clearer. Would Catherine with a C ban someone? Catherine with a C, you would never see stream, but all of the other streamers you know speak so fondly of their streams. Yeah, they just moved on. They stopped streaming a while back. I'd love to see them back. I really would. I'd love to see. There was nothing like hanging out in a Catherine with a C stream. Not because she was killed in this hypothetical, but just because everybody has like fond memories of something that just doesn't happen anymore. And you know, we probably all have those streamers right now. We probably all have the person that's like, man, I wish I could see that person stream again, dude. Stream on Ustream. All right. Back to it. Did Catherine perhaps detect an ulterior motive in Angela? The same motive that so far nobody had detected in me. I made the decision very recently, the day before yesterday, in fact. It has been conspicuous enough to have you emerge from your cell and start poking around into these horrific events. Two of you at once would have been a touch obvious, I should think. I would have refused to do it.
And now?
Now it would seem that I have no choice, Your Excellency. We are in a strange situation, to be sure, but I think between us, we can make sure that justice is done.
I'll stay out of your way. I don't wish to involve myself in any investigation. It does feel rather wrong for me to be anything but an impartial visitor.
Of course. However, if anything suspicious is told to you throughout the course of your counseling...
Suspicious? Where would that line be? I believe I'm giving you ample leeway to deal with this situation the way you see fit. I can think of a precious few members of the diocese that would accept your actions in this situation, let alone grant you the freedom to make half the decisions you have made here in the first place.
I understand.
Removing an anchoress from her cell is, well, such a unique course of action, I would not even know where to begin to explain it to the Archbishop. I'm not sure there's even a precedent on the books for how you might be punished if this situation came to light.
You can grab that full line if you want. I'll grab it. I got it.
I hope, for all of our sakes, that your radical decisions here at least yield some results. If they did, I might have an easier time preventing you from being excommunicated. Or worse.
I felt a lump building in my throat. I'd been so preoccupied with my own fragile situation at the Abbey that I hadn't even considered the wider world of church politicking. We will solve this mystery, and I will be vindicated.
I truly hope so. England is at war with itself, and the last thing the church needs is to appear weak and ineffectual. It must be a beacon at all times. Standard for the world to live up to.
We will not fail.
Very well.
There was a moment of silence as we all collected ourselves. The superior looked grimmer than I had ever seen her. She breathed deeply and seemed to stare right through the bishop, who was offering Angela and I an apologetic smile. Nobody spoke. There was little else to add, I suppose. The bishop turned to the superior, his mood suddenly cheerful.
Did I understand that you're performing in a moment? It'd be an honor to attend.
Yes. Yes, of course. She snapped out of her dark expression. We have just had a feast day for Saint Cecilia, and I shall be performing a short composition in her honor.
How delightful.
Angela and Hedwig, I would like you two to meet with me in my office once we're done here. I would like you two to share your... Oh. Hello. Am I still too early? No. Come in. Take a seat. Nothing since, Crisperbird. Absolutely nothing since. Certainly, been in the back of my mind as well. But nothing since. Nothing since the very opening of the game. Catherine's smile evaporated when she saw Angela and I standing together. She looked away and busied herself with the doorstop so the rest of the sisters could flow in. The question was, what happened to that one dude in the intro who was supposed to be hanging out near the Abbey at the very, very beginning? The answer is nothing. And I should remind everybody that this is Volume 1. Volume 2 came out in December of last year. Volume 3 is still in production. So the story is not going to be concluded here by any means. Of at least 3. Yeah. So that could be something that doesn't reveal itself until a title that doesn't even exist yet. I don't know. But I think it does bear repeating that the nature of this story is going to end in a to be continued. It's not going to be completely wrapped up. Everyone else trickled in behind her. I noticed Margaret hanging back to whisper something to Catherine, who reacted to whatever Margaret had told her with an expression of bewilderment. She shook her head and shrugged. Margaret looked oddly panicked, but whatever Catherine meant with that gesture seemed to put her mildly at ease. I was just about to turn away when her eyes met with mine. I whirled away, hoping she did not feel as if I had been spying on her. The gaggle of nuns that had entered the chapel was haphazardly morphing into an orderly line to greet the bishop, who was standing near the front of the room. He'd put on a hat in the intervening moments, and looked much grander all of a sudden. Behind him, the superior fiddled with the portative organ. People were bowing to the bishop and kissing his ring gently. I realized that I had failed to properly greet him in this manner when I first entered the room and quickly joined the line. How far gone was I to forget how to address my betters? It had only been a few short weeks since I had left my cell, after all. I was standing behind Catherine in line. Darcy was speaking to the bishop ahead of us, She scarcely had to stoop to plant her lips on the ring, and she did so without saying anything. Catherine stepped up as Darcy glided away.
Katerina, my darling, you look healthy. This place has done you good, hasn't it?
I can't complain. The bishop chuckled and wagged a finger at her before extending his hand for her to kiss. She bent low and took his hand in hers as she planted her lips on the golden band. She stepped away. I walked up to the bishop hesitantly, expecting to be admonished.
Can't say I've ever had this happen before.
This is a first for both of us, Your Excellency.
Indeed it is.
He chuckled. I was not joking. He held out his hand. My lips felt dry in the cool air of the chapel, but even in my sorry state, I could not let myself wet them with my tongue in front of this man. I bent down to kiss the ring. As soon as my mouth touched the metal, I realized I had no idea what to do. I just bounced off awkwardly. I stood up to face the bishop, hoping that it had not been as unpleasant an experience for him as it had been for me. He simply smiled and waved me off.
Ah, Margaret, how have you been faring?
It is complicated, Your Excellency. I moved out of earshot and took a seat next to Moira. She had eagerly scooted aside to accommodate me as soon as she saw me leaving the line to greet the bishop. Everyone was seated eventually, all save for the superior and the bishop. The bishop stood off to the side of the altar as the superior adjusted her instrument. She cleared her throat and addressed the chapel. Hello, everyone. I don't mean to keep you all waiting, but I am experiencing some problems with the organ. She pressed a few keys. The portative wheezed and sputtered, but did not produce whatever sound the superior was hoping for. Well, she began to play a tune. The instrument was not up to the task. One more try. Perhaps if I could feel Moira shrinking in her seat next to me. Oh, no. There we are. La. There was an echoing clunk as something inside the contraption shifted. Miraculously, the organ sputtered to life. A hushed voice from behind startled me. Could have been much worse. Believe me. She's trying her best. I do not wish to be unkind, so I will simply say that I am grateful that the superior shared her passion with us with such enthusiasm. When the performance finally ended, there was a smattering of applause. The superior gave her audience an odd little curtsy in response. The bishop awakened with a jolt and hastily started clapping along with us. I looked over at Moira, who was smiling sheepishly. She stood up as the clapping died down, and I tucked my knees in to let her pass. She walked up to the altar to speak to the superior, clearly offering some congratulations directly. The voice from behind muttered in my ear again. We're all getting together to throw a real celebration in the cellars later tonight. Another voice whispered in my other ear. Much later tonight. Midnight, in fact. I shuddered. Catherine was the last person I wanted to spend time with after midnight. But I wasn't sure refusal was an option from the tone of their voices. What sort of celebration? Your feast day, of course, but also a proper wake for Sister Catherine II. Sending off the old chronicler and welcoming in the new one. Properly. With a gulp, I nodded slowly. Well, that is a lot of celebrating for one day, but that's the spirit. You'll manage. You'll come, correct? Yes. I heard the two of them stand up. Catherine patted me on the shoulder and squeezed. Hard. Her nails dug into my skin through my robe for just an instant. I'm looking forward to it. I was not enjoying this new relationship that had evolved between Catherine and myself. In retrospect, I wonder if our shared secret was driving her to attempt to be earnestly friendly with me in her own unique way. But I think it's equally as likely that she was taking some kind of sick pleasure in taunting me, even though I knew of her liaison. Were I the kind of woman to spread rumors, surely had her in check. Lost power for 5 seconds, enough for the game to shut off. I'm sorry, Axel. At least you got auto-saving. Hey, it happens. You know how many times in games that we think about it? Just remember all the times in games that we've played here where I've lost so much progress and just shrug it off and keep moving. Game's freezing, you know? That one time when I lost all of that Final Fantasy II progress, just keep it moving. As I left the chapel, I noticed Angela standing outside, waiting for me. My heart sank. I might have opted for another hour of portative organ recital over this meeting. The superior says we should have this discussion ourselves. The rest of the sisters passed us by. Once they were out of earshot, Angela continued. She's busy and trusts me to get what I need out of you. And it might be suspicious if all three of us started taking meetings with her in her office. Yeah, as if I had not just explained the exact reasoning to you already, that would be a reasonable guess. Shall we walk? Lead the way. She turned around and set off down the path to the garden. Tell me what you know. There's, really not much to tell yet. You've had almost 3 weeks. What have you been doing? Well, I've had to adjust to a new life, and I've been doing my utmost to not raise suspicions. I must confess, I do not understand why it's taken you so long to adjust, as you put it. The way Superior told it to me, you positively jumped at the chance to leave your cell. What? That is not true! She turned to me, incredulous. Really now. I was practically forced out. I would have much rather stayed. Why would I willingly break such a sacred vow, one that I held for almost 20 years? It's true that I was moved by the Superior's cause, but if there was a way I could have helped without leaving my cell, I would have chosen that. I imagined an alternate path, one where I maintained my life as Anchoress, while the Superior brought me information to judge impartially, and became very angry with myself. If I had just fought for myself, perhaps I could have solved this ghastly crime and not had my life's work thrown away. Interesting. Do you believe me? I can certainly see the Superior glossing over some details in her zeal. She had already unlocked my door by the time I had a chance to protest. That does sound like her. Impulsive. Bullheaded. No wonder she had such a fascination with Catherine's death. Do you not share that interest? Did Catherine earn some scorn, somehow? Catherine earned plenty of scorn, but it's not what I meant. I just mean that despite all of their differences, she and Catherine shared a similar distaste for simple answers. It felt very strange talking to Angela this candidly. I wouldn't describe her as being any more friendly than usual. In fact, her attitude was putting my teeth on edge, but at the very least, it was more of a real conversation than I was used to having with her. So you still think that James did it, correct? Even after the Superior explained everything? Yes. I do. Oh. That being said, perhaps there is something you can tell me that would change my mind. Hence why I asked you to tell me everything you knew several minutes ago, I think. Oh, well, I wouldn't know where to begin. I'm not even sure what I've seen or heard that would count as any sort of clue or hint. Why not start by telling me the strangest things you've seen first, and then I'll decide what's pertinent and what's typical Lynn-Barrow oddness. In that case, the absolute most out of place thing I've seen is... I realized how ridiculous I might sound, but it was the thing weighing on my mind the heaviest. Go on. Well, I saw a ghost. Or perhaps even a demon. At any rate, it was an apparition of some sort. I can't imagine why the Superior has summoned my help in this matter. I'd heard that your ghost situation was just an elaborate prank, no? One of Eustace's little dress-up games? Well, that's what everyone thinks, but you did not see a ghost. Let us move on. Tell me something else. I really did, though. Eustace can't account for one of the visitations that I remember. Please, take this seriously, Hedwig. I do not have time for folk tales, and I definitely do not want to waste my time on this already spurious investigation being played for a fool. If this is an extension of some practical joke, please drop it. Tell me something else. I promise you, this is no joke. I saw the same figure a few other times. Outside my cell window, on the second floor of the cloister. In fact, when I bumped into you on that first day I joined the congregation, I was running up to try and see who it was. Angela let out a deep, almost rattling sigh. It was Eustace. She did the same infantile act in the Misericorde later, no? Yes, but she swears to me that the time outside my window wasn't her. So she is lying? And she swears that the ghost in the hallway was her, but I saw her not minutes later. In her nightclothes, no less. In fact, the only person I didn't see on the landing after that incident was... you. She shot me a look so piercing I physically recoiled. I was blissfully already fast asleep while all of that nonsense was happening. My shrieking didn't wake you up? No, it did not. And if you're really insinuating that I am your prime suspect, this would be quite a precarious situation for you, wouldn't it? She glared at me meaningfully as my head whipped around in a panic, realizing how utterly alone we were in the garden. I looked back at her in dismay, and nearly screamed when I saw what she had produced in her hands while I had been looking away. You! If I were a murderer who felt you were on my tail, I could have punctured your neck silently, whenever I liked, as soon as we passed behind the hedgerows. She idly held the knife out and pressed the flat side of the blade under my chin, tilting my head upward to forcibly meet her gaze. We stayed locked like that for just a moment before she finally retracted her hand. I jest. I carry this for self-defense. Some joke. I thought it was rather amusing. She twirled the little dagger in her hands, idly. Where did you get it? I've had it for years. A keepsake from my old convent. I thought I had lost it ages ago, but I'm glad to have found it again recently. It helps me feel safer in troubled times such as these. But James is locked up in the hospitalum. Your point? Well, if you're still feeling unsafe, perhaps deep down you know it could have been someone else. I doubt James is the only pervert who lurks around Lynn-Barrow Tor. I see. Is that why you've agreed to help the Superior, then? You think there's someone else out there? Possibly. Her eyes narrowed. My tone was incredulous, at least as incredulous as I could sound while as nervous as I was, and she could see it. She let out a short, sharp sigh, and then took a step closer toward me. I'd always been wary of Angela, but I assumed she was personally unpleasant, shall we say, at the very worst. This outright malice she radiated, twirling a dagger between her fingers, was repellent to me. What will you do if when we find out who really killed Catherine? Let me be perfectly clear. I firmly believe I have already found the man who really killed Catherine. I've stated it many times and will continue to state it. But I am open to investigating the matter closer, if only to prove that I am correct. I found him skulking around not far from the cloister after Sister Charity found the body. On her morning walk, yes. The Superior did tell me that much. Morning walk? Charity doesn't take morning walks. At least no further than the cloister. What on earth do you mean? Of course she does. Angela let out another sigh. Not as short and sharp this time, but filled with a sort of sympathetic condescension. She put her arms behind her back and began to walk again, leading me through the hedges. I really must press you for every last little detail now. More than anything else, I can help you find inconsistencies and lies. Do not take this the wrong way, but you are rather credulous. I do not mean to be insulting here. It's just to be expected of someone who spent 20 years locked up in a little room. My quarrel is with the Superior, not with you. If this was how Angela treated people she had no quarrel with, I dreaded to imagine how she argued with people she did. I began to wonder if the Superior had ever seen Angela's knife come out. Charity does not take morning walks. She's too old and too fat for that sort of thing. The furthest thing she takes in the morning is a walk from the dorms to the chairs that she and Marta share. I would consider that a morning walk. It's a walk in the morning, I suppose, but I do not think that is the image meant to be conjured by that phrasing. Charity would very much like the Superior, or whoever she tells her story to believe that she exercises rigorously. This has absolutely nothing to do with Catherine's murder. No, it doesn't. But I think it makes for a good object lesson. People lie constantly. It is practically a reflex for most of the women here. Has Catherine recounted her story to you? I very quickly tried to remember exactly what I could say to Angela in response without angering Catherine. I was making too many enemies. She told me that she, was forced out of Linbarrow Village because of politics or some such. Not a lie, but certainly an obfuscation. Catherine was accused of murdering her husband. I did my best to feign surprise. My goodness, did she really do it? In truth, I don't believe so. But she doesn't like to talk about it either way. I imagine it must be very hurtful to discuss, even if, especially if it was a false accusation. Yes, which is why I relented, finally, after arguing with the Superior for long enough. As sure as I am that James is the culprit, I must admit the prospect of being wrong haunts me. I spoke to James. He's in a lot of pain. Similar pain, I think. We'd completed a loop of the garden. Angela doubled back, and I followed. Neither of us spoke as we made our way back between the flower bushes. Angela appeared deep in thought, and I was hopeful that I could find an excuse to take my leave as soon as possible. However, she finally stopped and began to recount the facts she had organized in her head while she walked. I was stuck listening. Charity found Catherine in the cloister, beheaded next to the murder weapon. She alerted the Superior, whose office I was in at the time, as we had spent the whole night arguing about the various issues around the Abbey. When I left the office, I ran into Eustace coming up from the cellars and told her to rouse the rest of the sisters and search the west side. I myself immediately began a search of the grounds east of the cloister while the superior comforted Charity. I found James skulking away from the Abbey, and Darcy discovered his bloodied cloak not far from his cart. That is the story, as meticulously detailed as I can tell it. Now, have you heard or seen anything that contradicts those events or casts a new light upon them? I had to take a minute to rack my mind. I began to realize how little real investigating I had done. I suppose the mysterious figure doesn't count? It does not. Then, well, James claims he wasn't wearing his cloak when he delivered the mail that morning. That's something, surely. And you said Darcy found his cloak on the west side of the Abbey, yes? I see what you're getting at. James was found on the east side, but his cloak was on the other side of the Abbey, by the front entrance. Yes! Surely this proves he's telling the truth. I remember it being particularly windy that day, as it often is here on the mountain. It's possible that his cloak simply came loose as he attempted to make his escape. That, I suppose, is possible. However, it is also possible it did not. Therefore, we must find a way to reconcile this discrepancy, one way or the other. Did James tell you anything that might help? He said that Catherine would be able to vouch for him. Angela looked at me with an oddly quizzical expression, and I quickly added some detail. Because he saw her in the library when he was delivering a letter. I see. And has Catherine confirmed this? Yes. But that wasn't enough for the superior when I told her. Why not? Because, well, I actually saw Catherine and James speaking to each other. Quite recently, in fact. That's nonsense. It's true. I followed her out into the hills one night. I did not know it was her at first, but we crossed paths when she returned. Unfortunately, I didn't overhear exactly what they talked about. You followed Catherine all the way out to the hospitalum? Yes. All by yourself? Yes. Angela's eyebrows were liable to disappear underneath her white cap. And here I was, thinking you always refused to take the initiative. The superior neglected to inform me of that particular wrinkle. I'm starting to think that I may have accidentally made Catherine the superior's top suspect. I must admit, it might make her mine. If I entertain the idea that it was not James, at least. You think her story is tainted because of it? It's hard to imagine a scenario where the two can be taken at their word alone. Which, I am afraid, puts us at a stalemate. The superior sent me down to the village to see what the general opinion about Catherine's old murder case was. She wanted me to judge how believable the idea of Catherine killing someone was. Nonsense. It did feel a bit aimless. I'm not particularly used to the public. No, I mean, that's not why she sent you down to the village. She sent you down there so the rest of her sisters could work on the feast. That's a waste of time, and a rather tasteless way to treat a very serious matter. I agree. I had guessed that the others had certainly made use of my absence to prepare a surprise, but the idea that the entire trip had been a frivolous exercise, oh, that had me seething. All that anguish, for nothing. She could have just kept me in the library for the day. Indeed. Well, the bishop is here now, and his arrival used to be your deadline. With him here... Angela stroked her chin with a bony finger and gazed at the rapidly darkening sky. Let us make a pact. You and I. Forget what the superior says. She means well, but she's not equipped to handle this situation. I don't understand. The superior is desperate to save face in front of the bishop. Their relationship is strained, and that much I know. She believes that if she can present him with a satisfactory, no, not just satisfactory, salacious explanation to this tragedy, that he will overlook years of her shoddy leadership. She is just looking for accolades, for a promotion. So what do we do differently? Nothing. Only when we have our answer, whether it is assurance that James was the killer, or if we discover the unthinkable and accuse one of our own, we report it to the bishop ourselves. Why? To get the proper credit for our work, of course. Noble as her intentions might seem, I detect an undercurrent of self-satisfaction. I shook my head. Angela had spat out a lot of venom this evening, but this was too much. I don't believe the superior is that selfish. For the first time ever, I heard Angela laugh. It was deeply unpleasant, mirthless squawk. You just told me she pulled you out of your cell against your will. You're being used. You and I are both being used. I had no answer for this. The last bit of daylight was fading. Wind rustled the flower bushes, and for a moment I felt like I could hear the sea. Nothing else about our work changes. We can work separately even. I know you might prefer that. I certainly would. And we will meet with the superior at her request. But when it is time to give the bishop an answer, we give it to him. Angela held her hand out to me. I thought about my cell and the peace that those walls provided. I thought about the sheer terror I had felt when I had heard the rattle of the superior's keys and the ugly sobs I had stifled with my pillow that night. I thought about the childish rage that I had felt as I had thrown that soiled copy of Matthew from my window, and the sheer terror I had felt when I saw whoever it was outside watching me. I thought about Catherine, speaking to me through the squint, and how I would never, ever have a conversation like that with another soul. I grasped my hand around Angela's wrist, and she wrapped her fingers around mine. I could feel the hard leather strap of a sheath as we shook hands, and immediately regretted my decision.